Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and today we are going to be talking 3D embossing folders, metallics, some algorithms, and I have a fun little announcement. These are the cards that we're going to be making. You may notice some little hands in there. These backgrounds, these 3D folder ink backgrounds, I actually made in a live over on the Honeybee channel a few weeks ago, and we looked at doing different kinds of metallics, and there was some experiments. I'm actually going to be using the two floral ones today, not the gears. In addition to that, I'm also going to be using the bold background plumerias, the big birthday die, and then Heart of the Family and the Art Deco labels. I didn't know I was going to make two cards until I was in it. And then I'm also using lilac and waterfall colored cardstock from Spellbinders. So here, this is Sandy's Garden. I already had this one embossed because I was deep in the thick of card kitting at the time that I was doing this. And then the other one that I'm going to use today is Spring Medley. And so I'm just using Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock. For me, in order to get a good result, my sandwich through my Platinum, Spellbinders Platinum 6 is the A plate, my folder with the paper in it, and then the D, as in David, adapter plate. And I just run those through. Sometimes I run them through and then back again, but I really didn't need to with this one. I got a pretty good impression. And then from there, I was just kind of, remember, I was, on the live, so I was just kind of experimenting with what was going to work. I knew that I wanted to do all three of the backgrounds like gold, just in different ways. I prefer a yellow gold, that's just me, but you could do any sort of metallic dependent upon what product you were using, and we're going to try lots. So here, this is the Spring Medley. I'm doing lots of ink blending in the background. I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. I started off with a base of brushed corduroy, which is a warmer brown, and then I'm going to add little pockets of darker browns and more cool browns. So a cool color versus a warm color. Warm color has more red. Cool color has more like blue or green. And so here I'm just going in and adding them, in so that there's a lot of color variation, which I thought would make my metallic backgrounds a bit more interesting to look at. And then at the end, I'm going to go all over everything with the brushed corduroy again, because I feel like that gives me a much nicer blend and a bolder color. So the colors that I picked today, I actually picked, the reason they work so well together is because it's a triadic a color combination. It's triadic color combination, which just means that it's evenly spaced on the color wheel. If you have more interest in learning about color theory, I do have a class for that, which I will link below. Speaking of classes, this is my fun little announcement. So I told you I was doing this. I was deep in the heart of card kitting, and that was for Crop on the Cape, which was a ton of fun. And Eric and I went to Cape Cod in March and taught. And per usual, I had leftover kits, and just like I did the last time I taught there, I have those kits now for sale. So there's two options for the class. You can just buy the class, and that means you could just come with whatever supplies you have. As long as you have 3D embossing folders, you can do the technique. You don't even need the same ones that I do, though I do have a supply list if you're interested in that. Or you can get the kit. Now, here's the trick of it. The kit is a limited supply. Once they're sold out, and they won't be restocked. I have 43 kits, 43. And so those are available. With the kit, you will get all of the die cuts, cardstock, sentiments, everything. To make the cards, you will still have to provide your own inks and other supplies like that. But those are the two options for the kit. Through the 30th, through April 30th, I have a sale, $5 off on each one. So the one with the kit, we're making 4 cards, by the way, in there. The one with the kit is on sale for $30. After the 30th, it will go up to $35. And then the one that is just the class is on sale for $20. And then after the 30th, it will go up to $25. So anyway, that's over there and available on the website. And then per my normal classes, we'll have a Facebook group where we can kind of interact and share with each other. The class will be a live stream. Once we have completed the class, that live stream will be available for you to view. If you can't make the class or anytime you would like to rewatch it, those will be there. So we'll be doing several different techniques and making, like I said, 4 different cards. So I'm super excited about that. And then after I have this one, and then I actually taught 2 classes at Crop on the Cape. So I'll have another one that's more like summer themed coming up in the following month. Okay, so now these are all 3 backgrounds. Like I said, the gears one, I'm not going to use. And then here, this is just part of the experiment. And so I did want to leave it in, even though truthfully, it doesn't even really matter. This is not going, you're not even going to see this. But this is just one of the things that you can do. And I'll maybe do a separate video on this, because there's a lot more that you can do with a sanding block, to do different techniques. And maybe I'll do another video on that. But here I was just kind of seeing what we could do to experiment with the different ways that we could use our 3D embossing folders. And a lot of these ways, truthfully, you could probably use just your regular standard embossing folders. It wouldn't necessarily need to be 3D, but the 3D does offer a lot of dimension. So here what I'm showing is I'm sanding kind of at an angle so that I can get more into a specific area. So I'm just kind of holding it slightly up. And then for this one, because this print is smaller, the areas that you have to hit to sand are much smaller. So the effect is a lot more subtle. Something else to keep in mind, you do want to make sure that you're working with good quality cardstock, like a good weight of a cardstock, because the 3D embossing folder and then the sanding on top of it really weakens the fibers of the paper. So it's not going to fall apart per se, but if you do have a thinner type paper, it can get very fine. So here I just wanted to show that you could, do this and then add the color over top of it. I did a yellow for like a golden look. If you didn't have all the metallics, this would definitely be a way you could do that. But then we're going to get into the first way that we're actually going to play around with adding some metallics. So here I just have some clear embossing ink. This is just clear and sticky. An equivalent would also be like Versamark. And I'm using a brayer. This is a Tim Holtz medium brayer. I will say these are on sale right now over at Honeybee. So I'm just rolling that over, and then I am going to add ink, add my metallic with Perfect Pearls. Perfect Pearls is a pigment powder that binds with water, and it's very shimmery. And you just use their brushes to pounce this on, and it gets in kind of all in the little nooks and crannies. So somebody in the live, I had no intention of trying this, but I happened to have it, and somebody asked about it. If the sparkle dust from Nuvo would be, or a mica powder would be something else that you could use. The sparkle dust from Nuvo, I believe, is actually discontinued, but Crafter's Companion has a similar one, and so I will link them. I'll link the Nuvo if I can find it, but this also would work. You just, after you're done, here, see how we're like holding it in place, but then like vigorously buffing it with our brush. That's just going to get rid of any of the excess, but it leaves behind the shine. And then in order to lock that in, you would just kind of spritz your water bottle in the air and wave your paper through. Then for this one, we kind of got into some paste. So I do have the Lunar Paste from Simon Hurley and Ranger. This one is, what is the color of this? Slippery When Wet? Is that what it is? Yeah, it must be. That's what it says right on the front. Okay, who's old enough to know? Guys, who's old enough to know what album that is the name of? I'm going to give you... come on. I feel like this was super... I'll give you a fact about this album cover as well. They originally shot this album cover to be all kinds of very interesting things, and it was like photos of the band and everything else, and it ended up not even being... it wasn't like good. So they sprayed down a garbage bag with some water, and somebody wrote the title with their finger, so it looked like little water droplets. The title of the album was Slippery When Wet, and that's the cover of the album. Anywho, back to the card at hand. So here we did that. We put it on with our finger. We put it on with the palette knife. And then I also took like an old school Ranger ink blender and kind of pounced it into the background. Really, really liked that. And then here, this is I use these in another video. This is the shimmer relief paste from Altenew. This one is called Mayan Gold. And you can see that even though they're both gold, they're very different golds. And then I let that dry for a few minutes and I went back to look and see if I could put ink over top of it. I could a little bit, maybe if I used a different kind of ink, one that wasn't as translucent as a distress ink, that might work better. And then I was like, you know what, let's really just go for broke. And so I scooped out some of the relief paste, picked it up with the brayer. This was definitely like the messiest version. But I feel like I would have had more control if I would have rolled it out a little bit before I took it to my project, because where I put it down the first on the right hand side, a lot of paste, but on the top left, not as much and much more controlled. So even though I have two different like golds on top of each other, you can like, they're not the same. One is much brighter than the other. And so I think that's really interesting. So there's a ton of ways that you can use these. And now let's turn them into cards. So something to note, this top right die on the lilac colored cardstock, it actually should be cut out in the waterfall. It's the base of the, like the stem. I didn't realize that at the time. It was a little boo-boo on my part. But nonetheless, it ended up being fine. I realized it after I cut them, and then I just cut it out of the correct color cardstock. So here I cut the base out of the green. I am going to be coloring mine with Olo markers this time. But you don't have to. I just prefer the way that my die cuts look when I add detail to them. And that's not going to be for everybody. I totally understand that. But you can build this card and not add the coloring, or you could add it with ink blending or colored pencils or just like distress ink, whatever works for you. But I like a lot of dimension. I like a lot of bold color. And especially with something like this where I have such a strong background with that gold metallic, I need a strong focal point. And so I am taking a little cheater way, because normally I would go through and I would do the shading to each individual section. But I'm not. I'm going to glue them all together first. And how am I doing this so quickly? I am looking at the layering guide. So Honeybee has layering guides for their lovely layers and their bold backgrounds that are over on their website. You can just bring up the PDF and look at it on the screen. You can print it and leave it with your set, but it'll show you how to lay them out. Also, you do need to cut multiples, and in that layering guide, it'll tell you how many you need. So like there's some of the leaves that you need 2 of, there's some of the, like the smaller flowers, I think you need 4 of those, you need 3 of these little half flowers, 2 of the other, like the partial side view flowers, and then 2 of the big ones. No, 1 of the big ones, 2 of the medium-sized ones. But here's the thing. Okay, so they are all grouped together on the die. So as you're cutting them out, like they're all grouped together. So you can trim them so that you're only cutting what you need. But I find it easier, mostly because I don't like die cutting really at all. It's just, I enjoy the way they look at the end, but I do not enjoy the process of getting there. So I just cut them all out, which means I typically have a lot of leftover flowers. That, my dear people, is how we ended up with 2 cards. Because I had all of these leftover flowers, I did have to cut extra leaves. Real talk. I had all these leftover flowers and I was like, I'm not going to waste all that cardstock because I am still a cheap chicken. So I decided that I was just going to make a second card. And now I have a birthday card that I can use anytime I need it. Maybe for my sister in May. She does love purple. And then I also did the kids' Eric's mom's grandma's Mother's Day card, because my little lady also loves purple, and I thought that would be fun for her to give to grandma. Okay, so here I laid out all of my leaves, you saw me, and then glued those on. And then I did the branches brown to, because like the plumerias grow as kind of like a bush, I think, where they have all of their like trunk stems are brown. And so I could have done that before I glued down the leaves. I chose not to, but if you are worried about getting brown where you don't want it, you can do that. And now that I have all my leaves down, I'm going to go in with a combination of teals. I'm just going to add shading from the bottom of the leaf, kind of like to the left, to the right, and through the middle, and then I'll go in with my next color. For this I'll link them below. I always link them in the description. Well, I shouldn't say always, because sometimes time does get the better of me. Just like today, I've been trying to get this video up all day long, and I'm doing this voiceover at 10:30 at night. You're gonna get to see this video at like 11 p.m. It is what it is. Like I'm just doing my best, Lord. I just am. But anyway, so this is BG 2.3, BG 0.4, 0.7, and 0.8. Those are the teals. Then I'm going to go in and I am going to glue on my purple flowers. For the purple flowers, I shaded them with a V as in violet, 2.3, 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7. Also, you're going to see later on, I decided to add a little red into the middle. There's a reason to my madness, and that was our 5.7. But so anyway, here, see this flower right here? I went to put it down and then I realized that there was a lot of little flowers with stems that kind of tucked underneath that. So you do want to make sure you put down those little guys first, because then all of the stem ends will be hidden underneath that large flower. So just something to keep in mind when you're putting it together. That other one in that bottom left, see how I already glued down that leaf, but there's like a half flower sticking out. I did end up having to kind of like pry that up just a smidge so that I could stick the stem underneath the leaf. So anywho, now that they're all glued on, I'm going to go in and I am going to do my shading of the stems. I did the darker teal closer to the actual flower, and then I blended that into that same brown. What did I use for the brown? OR 4.8. And then I'm going to go in and do my shading for my flowers. So here, for the ones that are from the side, I'm really just adding shading like to the part where they meet the stem, and then I'm just blending it up. I'm not doing too much else with it. For the ones that are open, I am adding the shading from the center of the flower just like we would normally do, but I am leaving a little bit of a gap in between the petals, and I won't fill in that gap until I get out to my light mid-tone. But each time I'm just I'm going over with the next consecutive color, extending it out, leaving enough room for a highlight on the edge of my petals. Now you might be, like when you're watching this, you might be like, wow, Kelly, these are much darker than the lilac paper you started with, or than the waterfall paper you started with. But when we're coloring them, the lightest color is meant to help blend it into the cardstock. And so when we're coloring them, it does look darker, but as that alcohol evaporates, they do lighten up quite a bit. So the edges are very, very close to the original color of the cardstock. So anyway, like I said, I've been trying to get this up all day long, and technology keeps getting in my way. And honestly, here, do it from behind though, so you don't miss your marker, like doesn't slide. Here, I'm just coloring in the edges so that everything matches, so that like the lighter purple underneath isn't showing through on the darker sections. Same thing with the teal. And then I think we're almost to the point of starting to put things together. Oh no, we're doing the red, because I can't leave anything alone because I have to add the detail layers. So I did the red because when I was Googling purple plumerias, they have like a reddish pink center, and I was like, oh, I love that. So I wanted to add it. They don't have this detail, however, though. I just found it to be fun and interesting. So with all of the dyes that Honeybee does, because they do them so well, they do embossed details. And so I colored in a portion of the embossed detail with my white gel pen. This is very important. Wait for the white gel pen to dry, and then you can go over it with an alcohol marker. You don't want to scrub it. You just want to do small strokes, or you could even dab it, like do little dots. But in doing so, it kind of picks up that red color that we put down and created like a pinkish center. The color that I did go over them with was my light mid-tone. It was the B2.4. And if you are impatient like me, and sometimes I am, and you do get a little bit of white gel pen on your tip, don't worry. As you color with it, it'll rub off. And then I did go back in with that white gel pen once everything was dry and just do little dots in the center of the flowers. I'm using this Happy Birthday to cut out the shadow from vellum, and then I messed around a lot with the colors that I wanted to do the sentiment. So I tried it out of Waterfall. I tried it out of Teal Topaz, I think. And then I tried it out of, this is an all-to-new cardstock, Andromeda, and that one ended up being the winner. I also cut it out of white. The card was feeling very dark overall, and so I wanted something to bring a little bit of brightness. And then here, down at the bottom, I felt like that looked a little empty since I was blocking a lot of that purple flower with my sentiment. So I ended up coloring one of the leftover flowers to put in that bottom right-hand corner, which actually ended up being my top left-hand corner because I flipped it. And then for the sentiment, I did end up using the purple as a shadow to the white. So I adhered that first onto my vellum. Be cautious with your liquid adhesive, because with vellum, any adhesive you're going to be able to see. So we don't want to be too crazy. Typically I, do little dots, or I just use very, very little adhesive. And then when I'm adhering the white die cut over top of it, I'm adhering it kind of just like over and up to the right, so that the shadow is down to the left. And this is just going to help give it a little bit more dimension. Can we also have a moment for, look at the flowers on the left that have the marker added to them, the detail added to them, and then look at the flowers and the leaves to the right. That's where they started, that's where they ended up. This is what adding detail can bring to your card. If you feel like you're missing some dimension or your card needs a wow factor, like that is something that you can do with adding that detail work. Here I am trimming down my background. Normally I would be very hesitant to trim a 3D embossed background with a slider trimmer, but that lunar paste actually made it so that the paper was a lot hardier. It made it a lot thicker, and so I had no issues cutting it whatsoever. The reason that I shied away from the guillotine trimmer, which is what I would normally do, is because I have so many layers of cardstock here for these pieces that are hanging over. I didn't want to have to try to use the guillotine trimmer over that many layers of cardstock. So that's why I trimmed it first, and then I can just flip it upside down and trim off anything that is hanging over the edge. So anywho, my dear sweet child, I will try to keep this brief because we're almost done with this video. My dear sweet child woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then came to wake me up. And then I woke my husband up because it was my morning to get up with her. He went back to her room with her, and then they came back into our room at like 7:45. So then I got up with her. Now I was up late making this card. That's my own fault, not her fault at all. So I got only a couple hours of sleep, and then she was up super early. And then you know what they say about a baby that gets up early, that baby is cranky. And she actually wasn't she wasn't misbehaved. She was just tired and kind of whiny. And I was also tired and kind of whiny. So could I blame her? Not really. So I was trying to get this card finished so that I could get my video up today, so I could share about the card class. And it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen because we worked together all day long, she and I. As you can see here, from her adorable little bed head, that is, you'll never be able to see us put the gems on. These are rainbow rhinestones, by the way. You'll never be able to see us put the gems on because her adorable little curlies are right there. Yeah. She has the sweetest little curls. She comes by them naturally. Hers look way better than mine, though, I have to say. And she did all of my gems on my cards, and I think she did an excellent job. But anyway, so we didn't get a lot of sleep, and then we spent all morning together. And then normally I would work when she naps, but I also napped when she napped, and I have no shame in my game, because Mom was tired. Mama was tired. I certainly was. But tomorrow is my day to sleep in. So praise Jesus, hallelujah. Like, I'm so glad that we, like, in our partnership, that we do flip on and off. So here is both of the cards. Like I said, those classes will be on sale through the 30th, and then they'll be available after that as well. All of the details are over on the website. Here are both of the cards using some techniques for 3D embossing folders. I hope that this inspires you. And thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I will catch you on the next video. Bye.